I'll start by saying this. This crash changed the way that I view life, how I live it, and most importantly, how I value it. And today, I want to share with you how it has, what I'm doing to live life to the fullest, and how I value life after the crash. Okay, so I want to set the stage of everything that led up to the moment of this crash, where I was and what I was doing. So at the moment, this crash happened on December 20th of 2024. So a few days before Christmas. There was one big thing that I wanted to do for the main channel was to create a viral song for Christmas. And obviously maybe dethrone like Mariah Carey kind of as like a fun gag for the video. And so it just so happens that like I spent most of that week filming videos, coming up with ideas, and one of them was to create a music video and kind of a promo for the song on the release date, which was supposed to be December 22nd, that Sunday. So about 3, maybe 4 o'clock, I was packing up the car with a bunch of things. This is including like lights. This is including like an extension cord, another extension cord, a bunch of different things that I needed to film this music video because I wanted to go to see Christmas lights and film a music video there. One issue that I ran into on the day was after I got like everything loaded in, I drove over to Liberty Lake, which is about like a 15-minute drive from where I'm from. There's this Christmas light show. It's called the Winter Wonderland, and it's in this little park. Like if you guys have seen some of my Hoop Fest videos, we have like trained at that park. One of the big things that kind of came up when I was recording was there was a bunch of people that just kind of showed up. So I needed to find a location that I personally felt comfortable with like recording because like I've seen videos of people like recording live and in person with a bunch of people around them. That's not necessarily where like my social factor is at right now. I was willing to do it maybe from a distance, but when I kind of am in that mode, I'm just like, oh, okay. But I knew that I had to kind of like show up. I wanted to have like a microphone. I wanted to have like a light that kind of shined. So I needed an extension cord to run power to the vocals and then also to the light itself. The unfortunate part about my mom's car, because I was driving her car, which is a 2017 Santa Fe, that car is big enough to fill up everything that I need, so I took it instead. The one thing that didn't work was the outlet in the back, and I should have tested this before I even took off to come up with a plan B, which obviously if I did that, then this wouldn't have happened, but I was like, you know what, we're going to go over there, we're going to try it, because I'm like, I know it works, but I didn't test it beforehand, and I've told myself previously to like always test, make sure I have like a battery, make sure I have like an SSD in the camera, make sure like things are working. I make sure that I have cords. I make sure that I have power. Everything that I need to at least test to make sure it works prior to actually going. And if I've tested it before, it will usually work again. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. I was kind of bummed that I wasn't able to film because I kind of worked up like that social factor or like what's the social anxiety in a way, like the anxiety of like recording with like a bunch of people across the street. Like I had made it, we're like good. I got there, it didn't work. And I was like, you know what? I want to find opportunity around this. So there's a bunch of lights. I thought it would be cool to go film like all the lights from Santa to like reindeers to just a bunch of different cool things that I thought were going on that would be good in the music video. And I was like, you know what? I'll pivot the entire idea from being on the side of like the street and filming almost kind of like those in the hood or on the block type videos that have been kind of going viral. I thought it'd be kind of fun to do like one of those for Christmas with like somewhat of the same format. That kind of got canned because of the outlet not working. So I canned that idea. I filmed a whole bunch of Christmas lights, and that probably took me up until like 5:30, 5:40 at this point. I'm getting everything kind of packed into the car. I'm like, okay, we're going to get going. And I decided to pivot, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to set up a GoPro up on the, you know, like the oh crap handlebar. I set one of those up to film outwards. Then I film myself with this tripod in the car, which you can tell is broken now. It only has 2 legs instead of 3. And my main goal with this was that I was going to have that pointed at me, almost kind of like a carpool karaoke in a sense. The thing was, it was too dim in the car. Like you couldn't see my face. And obviously it's nighttime. It's the middle of December. Even by like 3 o'clock, it gets dark. This is 5:30. And so I at least got a few passes of like recording the song while I was like hip hop, hippity hey ha. And then, you know, at a certain stoplight, I turn it off and make sure that everything's okay. I just needed a light. That was kind of the hard part. And in addition to that, I obviously have my camera right there. I have my GoPro up on the oh crap handlebar. And so my plan was I'm going to head back home and I am going to grab a light. I don't know how this was going to work. I was going to figure it out when I got home. There's a roundabout over by a street that used to be a pretty prone car accident area. Like there would be a car crash like every single week there because you'd have to cut across 50-mile-an-hour traffic. They decided to reroute that into a roundabout, which, oh my goodness, kind of ironic, but thank goodness it's there because there was a bunch of these roads that you'd have to be crossing super fast traffic, and with cars coming in on the other side too, it was just very dangerous. Like we've had multiple roads shut down just because there was a lot of stuff happening. That stuff being like car crashes or people possibly dying. That's not good. It's not a good look. Like we needed to fix something, especially on a road that's 50 miles an hour, and most people are going faster than that. I go through the roundabout and I'm driving up. I'm in the far right lane, and it's kind of ironic because I saw the turn lane that you would get in because everything's running opposite, perpendicular to me. And so we only get one lane, other than like there is a side shot, like one of those ones that you don't necessarily have to go into the roundabout. You just kind of curve and bend in to like the existing lane onto the right. But when you're in a double roundabout, you're supposed to swing wide and you're supposed to stay in the right lane. So then people coming in from technically the right side can just shoot in because they're in a double lane. I hope that makes sense. Maybe I'll draw a diagram to formally put that out so you can see. But the one thing that's ironic is I was like, oh my goodness. I'm like, I'm glad that I did that right. Like I got in, I stayed. I'm like, yeah, I'm supposed to stay in the outside lane. I'm not supposed to like cut into the inner lane as I'm coming through. I'm supposed to stay on the outside. And it just so happens that I get out of the roundabout. I'm like, okay, that was cool. I see this cop drive super fast, like nearly tailgating a car because that car was speeding. Ironic enough, lights are flaring. I'm like, wow, that seems like that's going to be pretty rough. And then like 3 seconds later, impact. So at 5:53 p.m., that's the approximate time that this car crash occurred. On this road, there are two lanes that go against each other. At this certain point, there is a bulge for the other side of traffic because they are turning off of their side and crossing traffic to go up into a neighborhood. And it just so happens that that J-turn, which I'm assuming is the formal term of what I've heard, that J-turn, it's a solo like lane. Like there's no cars behind you that are like having to brake unless they are also turning. And so they have like all the time in the world. There's nobody rushing them behind them. And it just so happens that I'm in the far right lane, so nearing the edge of the road, the shoulder that is, and they come across, and we impact. And luckily enough, I just saw it right in time where I was able to crank my steering wheel to the right just a little bit because I had like maybe half a second and I was like, oh crap, boom. You know, like there was not enough time to like, especially in that moment. I don't know if any of you guys have been in car crashes or whether you got hit or whether you got, were the one actually causing the impact. The one hard part is there's like this innate reaction, this panic. If there's a fire in the house, what are you going to do? You're going to throw water on it? Like there becomes this fight or flight reaction that what would be considered the right move of like stomping on the brakes as fast as you can, like just goes away. You know what I'm saying? Like your shirt's on fire. What are you doing? You're like, it's this manic episode that we kind of go through. And it just so happens, like I've relived this moment so many times. I'm like, man, I wish I could have braked. I had no idea what to do in that moment. There's a car that just turned right across and half a second later I've impacted them. I'm like, do I have enough time to like fully put like my foot on the brake? And that's the hard part that you kind of have to live with in a way. I know a lot of people talk about this like survivor's guilt. I'm not saying that like I have that, but what I am saying is that there is a part of you that feels like you could have done something differently. You could have like, let's say you're giving somebody CPR, you felt like you could have done more. I think even paramedics, firefighters, doctors, people that are maybe accustomed to things like this on a daily, you kind of have to learn to live with it. I know a friend of mine, he just became a firefighter. He happened to get a call where somebody was hit while walking on a bike. They ruptured their head, and it just so happens that they passed away. Obviously, that first call, you have no idea. You're hoping that things are okay. You get to the scene, and obviously, maybe you're a part of it, but you just hope that you did enough to keep them alive. And that's the first, unfortunately, of many, especially for firefighters, police officers, anyone really in general. I hope not to get into any more car crashes where I'm going to have to relive that thing for like 2 weeks at a time. All that to say that it happened. There's not much more that I can do now. I maybe can learn for next time, but that's really not the case. Luckily enough, instead of like a straight T-bone, because obviously their force is going perpendicular to me, so they have no force against me. All my force is driving right into the side of their car. But luckily, because they're kind of turning, we get into this kind of like bowed-like segment. In a way, when that all happened, I remember them asking me at some point, like, did you lose consciousness? I don't remember that I did. I'm just a solo person. Like, if there was somebody in my passenger seat and they like told me I would and did, then that would be like, I would understand. But the iffy thing that I am wrapping my head around is when that happened, all the airbags, so the driver's side upper airbag, the lower extremity for my legs, obviously the steering wheel went off, and then also the behind passenger driver's side went off. Those are all the airbags that went off. I've never experienced an airbag. It's very unique. It's very soft. I know a lot of people are kind of scared that maybe an airbag would actually kill you. Never once did I feel that. All of those went off, so I was just like in this bubble on my entire left side. The unfortunate part about that is since we kind of hit basically front left headlight to their front right, a lot of the things on my side of the driver side of the car is just mangled. So I closed my eyes in the moment because that's what you do. There's like a ball that came at your face. You're going to close your eyes. You're not just going to go boink. Like I even did that there. I even closed my eyes. It's just like a natural reaction. I basically get out of the car. Like I don't remember like how much from like the time of that. Like I don't think it was like a minute, but it was very suspicious because when I got out of the car, I kind of moved a few things over back to the passenger seat. Obviously I saw that the tripod was broken and whatnot. Like I just needed to kind of get things off of me. These headphones, my camera, like I just needed to move things over. Everything on that side was completely fine, like GoPro included, but things came out of like the middle console. Like there was a coffee that my mom had in the car and that was like spilled everywhere. Like that was all over everything. So like some things were a little sticky. And then on top of that, I finally unbuckle. I like try moving the airbag, but it's like firm, like something you would wear and have when you're camping. And I just so happened to like try and move it, but I couldn't move it up. So I like move it forward, try and like get my head under it and then push the door open. And it was like, and I was like, oh, that's okay. I'm like, I don't know. Like it opened like a good foot, but I wasn't able to get out of it pretty easy. Like I had to like push it. And I was like in my head, I'm like, oh, I don't want to ruin the car. That was my thought. I was like, oh, I probably shouldn't do it. No, the car, like just push it. It's okay. I had to come to terms with that. I got out. There are 4 people in the other car. It is just me and the one. The unfortunate part about it is a lot of these people were kind of younger. They're at least in their teenage to early 20s age. And for this to happen, it is kind of a lot. I think as we've lived life, those moments, it becomes very fragile. And no matter if you are younger in your teens or even obviously maybe even your 50s and 60s, there is this acute way of viewing life, especially experiences, right? Like everyone has those like quote unquote midlife crises. When I got out, there was a girl and she was like screaming. She was like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. I felt like, okay, my collarbone like definitely hurt. That would make sense. I had my seatbelt on. Everything on my left side's fine. Like everything's fine. Like my hips, my legs, like even my left shoulder, all fine. But man, that collarbone felt rough. It felt very tender, like you got a bruise, like not just like in a specific area, but like your entire region of your clavicle. So I get out. This girl is like super hysterical. And rightfully so. Like, I'm not saying hysterical in a bad way, but like, that's the reaction. She's like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. One of the other guys that probably was around her age is like trying to calm her down. She has her phone, so she's on it. And I was like, are you calling 911? And she's like, no, you call them. I was like, okay, let me go find my phone. So I try opening back up the door, grab my phone, and then end up calling. By this time, it's 5:54. So from impact to calling 911 has been 1 minute. Everything I've explained has been less than a minute, at most 1:59. The tricky part about this call, I got put on hold. The 911 operator is like, "Hey, do you mind if I put you on hold?" And I was like, "Yeah, I guess." Like, in my mind, I said, okay, like, I mean, I guess it is an emergency. It doesn't seem like anyone's hurt. I mean, I guess she's hysterical. I don't know what type of state she's in. I think it's just pure shock, if that makes sense. It doesn't look like she's broken. Like, she's walking, like she's trying to get to an area to sit down. Like, it seems like she is physically okay. I mean, I'm sure it hurts. But the hard part about that is I'm assuming she probably was like the side passenger. That would have been the side that I hit. I don't exactly know, but based on her reaction and her being the first one to go to the hospital, because that ended up happening. She did take an ambulance ride, and I think 3 of them all took it, whether that was for actual, like, hey, I'm sitting in the gurney, or like, I'm just riding with them. One of them stayed back, which was the driver. He stayed back, and like, we sorted everything out. Insurance things, license, of course, with the officer. And so all that to say is that I got put on hold by 911. And I don't know in the moment if that was the right decision of like, I could have been like, no, this is like a real emergency. You know, in the moment, I'm just like trying to analyze like so many different moving parts, things I don't know, and trying to just make the best decision. I think I was like okay with it. I think in hindsight, it kind of reminds me of the TikTok ban. I think everyone was like, oh my gosh, like TikTok went down. We don't know how to react. And then like 15 hours later, it came back up. The thing was, I got put on hold for like, I don't know, like 10 seconds. And sure, like every second counts in a life or death matter. I don't think it was that. But again, I could have been on hold for like 5 minutes. I could have been hold on 10 minutes. This is right before Christmas. This is on a weekend. I'm sure that there's a lot of things happening, a lot of 911 calls happening. It's nighttime. It makes sense. I'm trying to just maybe rationalize that decision. And maybe that comes off of like, no, you should have said like, no, Jared, like, come on, like, no, this is like insane. I then talk to this operator, and the unfortunate part about this is where this road is a difference between county line and city line. And so the crash occurred apparently in the city of Spokane Valley, whereas if it happened in the county, it would have been a completely different officer. But it just so happens that, like I said earlier, there was a cop that drove by. All of these people that apparently were driving the other way, the same way that the cop was driving, were telling the cop that, hey, there was a crash back there, you need to go. And so luckily enough, I mean, maybe 5 minutes passed. It kind of took a little bit of time. It wasn't like 2 minutes passed. Unfortunately, not unfortunately, but fortunately, there was a guy that had high beams. It was almost just like in a Vista car, like a cable car or power car. He had like these really high, like yellow flare lights, and he had like somewhat of a high beam. So he turns that on. He like stays behind us. And there was another guy in like a Kia Soul that came by and just wanted to make sure that we were okay. They all waited. Both cars waited. I made sure to thank them just because I know for myself, like I was generally okay. The call to my family was a little hard. That's kind of the tough part. After 911, I get at least on the line with either person that I need to talk to. They send a cop over. I'm like, hey, like there's a cop here now. Thank you so much. Like we'll sort this out. I end the call. You know, the people end up leaving that were there. The cops kind of just take that position over. The hard part is people are trying to get up to the road and people are trying to get out of the neighborhood. That kind of became a little impossible for a lot. So they kind of had to wait. So I hope that nothing was in a rush and nobody was in a rush because a lot of people were waiting. The one big thing, again, is that call. I tried calling my dad. I tried calling my mom. I didn't get an answer. I didn't really expect an answer. That's just kind of typical. I called my sister and I was like, hey, Caitlin, are you home? She was like, no, I'm at a friend's. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I just want to let you know I was like in a crash. And I guess I maybe didn't describe the details of like how serious it was, but I was like, hey, I was in a crash. I was like, it was on Trent. She kind of put that together that, hey, it's on Trent. Like this is it's a pretty fast going road. And so I think she kind of put it together, and I ended up, I think maybe when I was on the call with Caitlin, I ended up getting a call from my parents. I ended up calling, I think, my mom, and I was like, hey, obviously I have to tell her that her car is like completely mangled. So funny enough, I mentioned that like, hey, I just got into a crash. I'm over by this road in Trent, and just please, like, if you see your car, I just want you to know that I'm okay. Just don't be shocked if you see your car in a state that it wasn't formally in. And so for better or for worse, I think her mind probably would go to the worst. Like her car like flipped like 8 times. Like I made it out alive. I think maybe the tone of it at least gave her a little bit of reassurance of like, hey, like I'm not like panicking. My adrenaline and blood pressure was very high. Like I can tell that my blood felt like it was like boiling in a way. Like I was like, oh, like, I made the call. They end up coming over 15, 20 minutes later. And I walk over, gave my mom a hug, gave my dad a hug. So then obviously the hard part is like, I need to like get them together to describe what happened because I don't want to tell them one and then have to explain it again. So I tell them what happened. Obviously it's just kind of like tough. Like I felt sorry for my mom. She just got a new engine in her car and she had finally been able to drive her car for seemingly like the past 3 months. She was out of a car for a month and now she's been out of a car for an additional month. And so at least we had gone through it one time. It just so happens that this time it might've been the final time that she drove that car. And so that's all still being worked out as of right now, as of recording this. And so they're on site. I tell my mom everything that happens. I tell my dad everything that happens. I let them know that I wasn't able to find like the insurance like right away. And I mean, it's my mom's car. I mean, sure, like you want to do the right thing. Your parents are going to show you like, hey, here is my insurance. You know, I'm going to tell my family, here is my insurance, just in case if you were to drive it, you get pulled over or things of that nature. That just generally happens. That hasn't happened. I'm sure most of your guys' families, you guys don't do that. It's a very commonality. Like that's my car. I know my insurance is in the glove box. Find it if you need it. You know, that's just like the free will of doing that. So the crash ended up happening. I needed to get a bunch of stuff out of my mom's car. Things that were important, like a pen is not super important. Like a coffee stamp card is not super important. We get out all the pillows. We get out all the blankets. We get all of my equipment out. After the officer gives us our like receipt, it's like a receipt pretty much. It has both of our insurances, tickets that need to hand out. I did not receive a ticket, so great. That's like at least somewhat of the icing on cake. It's not like salt on wounds. And so that ended up happening. There was a failed to yield ticket obviously given to the other person, the driver of that vehicle, just because he had failed to yield. Like I was oncoming traffic and he did not yield. And obviously that caused the crash. I don't want to put any blame on him. He's younger than I am. And I know that kind of experience is new for him. He was very sorry. He was very just like kind of remorseful. He was like, I'm so sorry. Like, he's just like, it kind of sucks, especially at a time for him. I know he mentioned what was going on. I won't mention that here, but he mentioned there was a lot of things going on. He's kind of new to the area. If that gives you any inclusion of what's going on in his life, but I understand. I'm not like holding anything against him. Like it's just a pure accident, you know, that this road is a little tricky. I understand. And it was dark. I can completely understand if maybe you thought that there was more distance because like, I don't know, you go a half a second earlier and, you know, I maybe scraped the back tail of your car and I would be able to see it. I'd be able to slow down, but that's just the reality of what happened. We can't reverse it. The crash happened. People have been sent to the hospital to get checked up on. So all that to say, I don't hold anything against him. It's not like he did this maliciously. It's a pure accident. It just happened to result in maybe 50-mile-per-hour car going into the side of theirs. I hope everyone's okay. I haven't been in contact with him ever since, but I gave him a hug. We prayed, and after that, I left. We left in my dad's truck. It was very packed in the back, and after we got home, it was just funny enough, my parents were just making dinner, and so like we got home. My sister obviously was still at her friend's house, and she got home the next day, and she checked up on me. That night was very tough. It was very, very tough. The collarbone was very sore, and I knew that like once the adrenaline came down, my mom made me some breakfast. This was the night of, so because I ate breakfast, I was like, I just want something easy. I like breakfast for dinner. It was what I was craving anyways. I again just had plans of going to record. That completely changed. Collarbone started to come down. My wrist and hand started to hurt because I would have had my hand on the steering wheel, that is, and so that kind of ached. It's fine now, but like my neck to like my collarbone to like my shoulder and then everything on the front and back like very much hurt. And I was like, oh, my toe hurt, like my big toe. I go to bed and I like am stiff as a rock. By the time I hadn't gotten a weighted blanket, so luckily enough I didn't have that. But the hard part was, again, like I went to bed and I knew that like it kind of hurt to get up. So I slept with the dogs that night. We have 2 dogs, pretty big golden retrievers. I left the door open because in the morning time, they usually get fed. I did not want to have to wake up and be like stiff as a board to go open that door. So I left the door open and then went to bed. I woke up. My girlfriend came over. She gave me a neck brace. We were trying to put on a Christmas sweater and whatnot. And yeah, it was really tough. I got a little emotional just because like it really hurt to like get my arms up here and like pull it over. It hurt a lot. Like I was able to get through the pain, but I was like, I hope that this isn't like a forever thing. And that's kind of what happened for like the next 2 weeks. Like the pain kind of like was diminishing very slowly. I was feeling better every day, but it wasn't going quick. It was just like, we're going down, going down. The unfortunate part about that was you go to bed every night just kind of reliving that moment. Could things have been differently? You don't feel like you lose your life because obviously you get up, you open the door, you're fine. But there's a lot of people that maybe in that case, whether you're in the car that got impacted or whether the car that you're in, driving, don't make it out. Even if it were like a 40 miler. The same exact 50, 60. There's a lot of times that those don't happen, but you wouldn't know if you survived or if you're still alive or if you're okay until your eyes will open up and you're there. And the hard part about that is like, could things have gone worse? Could things have gone better? I mean, I guess things could have gone better, but things certainly could have been worse at the same time. And again, that weird survivor's guilt of this happened. Could I have done anything differently to maybe prevent that? Could I have taken some more time? Could I have texted my girlfriend, be like, hey, I'm heading back to the house? That 5-second interaction being like the difference. There's a lot of weird things. Could they have made a decision? Like, maybe somebody forgot their meal that they, had for takeout and they forgot it. They needed to go run back. Or did they forget it? And so then that timeline adds up. We are forever linked, us and the driver, us and the four. I'll never forget that experience. I'll never forget just embracing each other. Like we gave each other a hug and made sure everyone was okay. Again, if somebody were severely injured, I would feel like, my gosh, like I would feel like that a part of me is my fault, and it's that weird guilt that you kind of carry. The way that I've kind of viewed it is life is short. You wouldn't hope that a crash is the moment that gives you that inclination. A lot of people mention that you don't really know how that affects you until that's happened to you itself. Whether that's somebody, in a drunk driving accident and maybe you caused it and you have this immense guilt that you killed somebody in an accident because you decided to be reckless. Or on top of that, maybe vice versa. You're a parent that lost a kid to somebody that decided to make that decision. And I'm using that as an example because that's usually something that would happen. We see this a lot in politics, whether there's gender identity, however you identify, and there's a parent that maybe doesn't agree with that, but you would never know how that would affect you because maybe you were so against it, or maybe you're the complete opposite, and then that just so happens to be where you fall. You don't know how things affect you until they've affected you personally. That's one way that I've viewed life kind of after. I know for my parents, maybe they've had car crashes, incidences similar. I know for my mom, she's mentioned hers. The way that I've kind of lived from here is just hey, I'm not going to take anything for granted. I watched a video recently about this entire eruption, or not eruption, but this volcanic activity in Ethiopia. And a lot of these people are just in these fields, just walking. They're carrying around guns for protection because of the socioeconomic political warfare that's going on there. And these people are having to make these reservoirs of volcanic eruptive thermodynamic water. And they're hoping that the weather's right just to get it. I live in a house that has AC. I get to wake up every day and go make a bowl of cereal. And I'm not to say that that guilt of somebody has it worse than me and I should be more empathetic towards it. Sure, I can see that that's the situation there, and I can take what I have and be thankful for it, because I could be far worse in a area that I might be risking my life every day by just going to this location or having to trek 6 hours to go see this beautiful, wonderful place. We don't decide on where we live, who our parents are, who our family is, where we grow up. It's not really a decision we make. And so living with what we can control, living with what we value the most. I've been a lot more thankful to my parents. Obviously, that's a tough call that you have to make, especially to your mother. On top of that, one of the big things is I've just valued life to the fullest. I'm going to go do things. I want to be great. I have big goals, and I don't want to feel like what I've gone through is a forever thing. I will think about it very often. I will move on from it. But every action that I have hopefully leads me into this goal. If I wanted to go write a best-selling book, cool. I don't care what anyone would have to say about that. I want to do it. And not to say that I'm going to go write a best-selling book, but if I had that goal, or I want to go busk in New York and make a living off of it, is that what I would truly want to do? I know for a lot of people, especially coming out of high school, there's this immense pressure when you turn 18 and even 20 and even 21. I know for myself, I felt that, but don't feel like you have everything figured out. Value what find what you value most, value things that you hold close to you, whether that is the things that you create, the people that you're with, the family that you love. Value those things first. Do what you want to do. If you want to be a car salesman and you feel like that's like the gig, great. Go do it. If you don't have a certain income, do what you can to make that happen, I know for myself, I've been making content forever. I've had people that say like, oh, he makes YouTube videos. I love this. This is something that I truly love, and I don't want anything to hold me back. And so I've been very active within my content. I want to continue to be active within my content and my career because this is how I make a living. This is a passion of mine. This is something that I really want to do. I love sports commentating. I love directing and producing. And so different elements of those kind of come to life when I'm making content. And I just hope that there isn't an instance where you're like, whoa, I could have maybe not woken up from that instance. And the hard part about that is over the past month, I was kind of iffy on maybe taking this new coaching job. I was like unsure of if I wanted to. I was like, man, that car crash, like I was in this mindset and in this, I guess, mode, this zone of like, you know what, I just kind of want to go full in on it. Every waking day is going to be like somewhat of the same thing. I'm going to sit at this desk or stand at this desk and I'm just going to kind of keep chipping away at this goal. I'm going to continue to make content. I'm going to put out podcasts, main channel videos, live streams, like make it happen. I'm going to make it happen. I have 8 hours to sleep, maybe a little more depending on the day. I have 16 other hours to get, work done in relation to track, in relation to my content. On top of that, I'm also joining back up with the OCR because I took some time off with my foot injury and obviously the car crash now. And I'm joining back up with the company that I've worked for and helped produce content for, especially on the YouTube side and short form content. That is something that I really enjoy. I love producing. I love making content. I love being like, hey, what is like a cool thing that you like about Spartan racing? What is like a celebrity who is the celebrity that you'd love to do a Spartan race with? Making content. What do you think is like your favorite obstacle, your least favorite? Getting their experience. On top of that, just capturing moments. That's what I love. I had a clip last year in 2023 that made it onto ESPN. That is super cool. And that's because I got the opportunity. And so decide what opportunities that you want to take. You don't have to take every single one of them. Come up with a guideline that you enjoy, whether that's you like quilting, whether you want to start a business, whether you want to be a family, whatever that may be. I hope that there isn't an instance a bad one that is. I hope that they're all good, but I hope that there isn't a bad instance where things change and you view life a little differently. Because I sure have, and unfortunately, part of it happens to be, hey, a lot of insurance calls, a doctor's visit here, a doctor's visit there, an x-ray, and I'm grateful that it's at least just that because, I know there's a lot of money involved with these insurances, the cars, there's a lot. It's not fun, but the biggest thing is I'm grateful that it isn't worse. I'm grateful for the life that I live because it could be a lot different. And so that is my experience with my first ever car crash, how it's changed the way that I view life, what I'm doing to live it to the fullest, and most importantly, how I value it. Thank you guys again so much for watching, and I hope you have a good one.